Look at this clincher. I'll tell you why this is a clincher. Look at the call records, and they tell you the entire story of what happened. Over the last few days, Amita, Republic TV has been telling you how did Sandip Singh get to the house? How did Sandip Singh take control of the situation? How was he at every stage, from the house to the Cooper Hospital to the crematorium? At all places, he's in control of the situation and talking to the ambulance driver. And he's in control of whatever is happening at each of these locations. Now look at these call records. I'm going to put out the full details. Akshay Bangar, the first call. So we have the full details, the call records of Sandip Singh, the man we told you his role is under the scanner, seen at the Cooper Hospital, seen at Sushant's residence, and seen at every location. Look at him, the first call, and we have details of the call on June 14th. The first call was registered. Akshay Bangar is the ambulance owner, the owner of the ambulance service. June 14th was the first call. On the 16th of June, the last call was made. 14th of June is the day Sushant was murdered. And on the 16th of June, the last call was registered. The last rites of Sushant Singh Rajput took place on the 15th of June. Why was the last call made on the 16th of June when the last rites were on the 15th? And what was Sandip Singh doing talking to the ambulance driver in the first place? Who authorized him to talk to the ambulance driver? Now, the information available with us, and Shavan and all our reporters will also tell you that the person responsible or who was supposed to get the ambulance was the police. The police called for the ambulance is what we were told. On record, we were told that the police asked for the ambulance. If the police called for the ambulance, how did Sandip Singh get into it? Why did Sandip Singh call Akshay Bangar? And why did he call him first on the 14th and the last call was on the 16th? Why were there 4 calls that were exchanged? Now, these are some obvious questions that arise, and that's why we believe that Sandip Singh could be central to the entire plot, and he should be investigated. He has not even been investigated yet or questioned by the CBI. But this is the big breaking story. Let's put out the details of the calls. We have the full details of the calls. The first call, second call, third call, and the fourth call. Let me tell you more about the details of the call. We have the graphics of that as well. We'll just put out the graphics, and I'm going to talk over the graphics because we have full details of the call. Let me tell you the first call. The first call was made. There were total, all put together 4 calls. Details of the first call. I'm putting out the details of the first call. 14th of June at 6:40 p.m. 14th of June at 6:40 p.m. This is when Akshay Bangar, the ambulance driver, called Sandip Singh for 48 seconds. 14th of June at 7:57 p.m. Akshay Bangar, the ambulance driver, calls Sandip for 51 seconds. 14th of June, Sandip calls Akshay Bangar at 9:59 p.m. for 104 seconds, close to 2 minutes. 16th of June, Akshay calls Sandip for about 24 seconds. Why were these calls made? Amita, why were these calls made? I don't know whether we have Prakash live. We'll try and get Prakash live as well. But in all of these pictures, what becomes very clear is that Sandip Singh was in direct touch with the ambulance driver. Why did he do that? Wasn't it the Mumbai police who called the ambulance driver? I mean, these are explosive details. Republic TV, from the time we questioned him on the debate, confronted him on the debate and exposed the contradictions of Sandip Singh on Republic TV, on live TV, the man also told Republic TV that a police officer called him. He said, police officer called me, was in touch with me, but did not record my statement. Isn't that suspicious? Why would the police just call him, be in touch with him, but not record his statement? Raises questions on the role of the Mumbai police as well. Why did he call Akshay Bangar, the ambulance driver, directly? Why did he make 4 calls? Incoming, outgoing. Why was he in constant touch with Akshay Bangar? And I'll tell you who Akshay Bangar is. Akshay Bangar is the owner of the ambulance service that Republic TV stung about 3 weeks back. About 3 to 4 weeks back, Republic TV, one of the first stories we did was about the 2 ambulances. Why 2 ambulances were called? That's another story altogether, but the point is, Sandip Singh was in the middle of all of this, in the thick of things. Look at this. Sandip Singh, from the 14th of June to 16th of June, 14th of June is when Sushant Singh Rajput was murdered. 16th of June was the last call. Why was this Sandip Singh directly in touch with Sushant, with the ambulance owner? Why wasn't it the Mumbai police that called the ambulance? Now we have some questions. Did the Mumbai police call the ambulance, or did Sandip Singh call the ambulance? If Sandip Singh called the ambulance, who authorized him to call the ambulance and arrange the ambulance services? Were there 2 ambulances or not? And who called the two ambulances? Why were two ambulances called in the first place? And did Sandip Singh arrange for both these ambulances? If Sandip Singh was directly in touch with Akshay Bangar,
yes,
we need to know what the nature of the conversations were. Akshay Bangar has not even been questioned. He's not even been examined by the Mumbai police. He has not even been called yet by the CBI, but I think more and more details are coming out and the story is getting very interesting. There were 4 calls exchanged. Details of the calls are on Republic TV. We're reading out the full details. Akshay and, by the way, Amita, Akshay and Lakshman Bangar are brothers. Akshay and Lakshman Bangar are brothers and they run the ambulance service. So we stung Lakshman Bangar as well. We called Akshay Bangar and in fact, we have the details of the conversation with Akshay Bangar. Akshay Bangar also contradicts the Sandip Singh. We'll just play that out. We have that conversation as well. I'm just waiting for more details. We have a bigger expose coming up in a few minutes.
Absolutely, the different versions, Niranjan. The different versions that came out when we stung both the brothers. When Akshay, who is the ambulance driver, he had said he was the one who brought the body down. It was very different. In fact, what his brother and the ambulance owner Lakshman had to say, it said it was the Mumbai police who brought it down. And the third version that came to light was Siddharth Pithani, who said it was him who brought Sushant's body down.
Yes.
So there has been various different versions that came to light. And even between the brothers, we saw that conversation happening on the investigative report. We'll play that out when we get access to it once again, on how Lakshman was calling his brother Akshay and asking him that what had happened on 14, did you see the body? Was the body brought down by you or by the police? And this is something that those varying versions that have now been come to light and questioned now according to the latest call data record.
Let me tell you a little bit about that, Amita. Let me tell you about that.
Yes.
Let me tell you about that. About the report that you spoke of. Why is it? First of all, let's put the story in context. Why are these calls suspicious? Why did Sandip Singh call the ambulance owner and the ambulance driver? Why was he in touch with the ambulance driver and the owner directly? Because we were told that the Mumbai police called the ambulance. If the Mumbai police called the ambulance, was Sandip Singh an officer in the Mumbai police that he was directly in contact with the ambulance driver? Why was he in touch with the ambulance driver? And what were the nature of these calls? Why was the first ambulance called, sent back? Why was the second ambulance called? We have the details of these calls. 4 calls. Okay, look at this. That's the shot of the ambulance as well. And in all of these ambulances, there is one or two shady people also in the ambulance, suspicious people. Let me tell you, the guy in the pink cap, the man in the pink cap and seen inside the crime scene is in both the ambulances that comes in and the ambulance that goes out. So he's central to this entire story. What was in that bag? And that eventually a black bag was handed to the police. What was in that bag? And secondly, if Sandip Singh was directly coordinating the entire ambulance, then there is a bigger story to it. Why was he directly coordinating with the ambulance? Let's see if Prakash is joining us live, because we'll go across to Prakash. He's accessed the full details. And Prakash will also join us with the full details. And this is something that we need to look into. And I think there is a bigger story that's emerging after we've put out the full details of the calls. We have every detail, every second, every call, every detail of who he called and why he made the calls. Let me also tell you that going through the entire call records, a few interesting people that we came across, and we are not making any conjecture. We're just reporting the facts as is. But Sandeep Singh was also in touch with Sanjay Nirupam. He was in what capacity, we don't know. Of course, Sanjay Nirupam will explain those calls. He was also in touch. He was also in touch with Suraj Pancholi's mother. Now, these are some of the details that we have accessed, and we'll tell you all about the full details. But I want to go back to these calls. And tell you more about the calls that Republic TV has accessed. The first channel to tell you about the ambulances. The first channel, about 1 month back, we told you there were 2 ambulances. And we told you that in both these ambulances, there were questions that arise, because why did the first ambulance come in? And what did the first ambulance leave with? Why was the second ambulance called? Who was in the second ambulance? There were bags exchanged, a black bag held by an ambulance attendant. We don't know what his identity is, but he was there holding a bag inside the crime scene, hands it over to the police, and then the body is put into the ambulance, and the bag also goes with the ambulance. So we don't know what was in that bag. Nobody has spoken about that bag. Nobody has clarified the details of that bag. Why were 2 ambulances called? Akshay Bangar knows. He's the owner and also the driver. Akshay and Lakshman Bangar are brothers. So if that is the story, the whole story is, why was Sandip Singh in charge? That's our simple question. Why was Sandip Singh calling the ambulance driver? Why did he call the ambulance driver? What was the nature of these calls? There were 4 calls. We have the details of those calls, the duration of those calls. Why was he directly in touch?